The morning Daniel Mercer saw his neighbor through her kitchen window, he didn't know he was staring at a woman worth $3 billion. He didn't know she'd been watching him too, studying the tired single father who carried his daughter on exhausted shoulders every morning. What he saw was simply this: a woman standing in golden light, holding a cup of tea, looking more at peace than anyone he'd ever known. When their eyes met, she didn't flinch. She smiled. Then she mouthed two words that would change everything. "Come over." But before he could move, the curtain closed. If you want to see how a broken father and a hidden billionaire found each other in the quietest, most unexpected way, stay with me until the end, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The alarm went off at 5:47 a.m., same as always. Daniel Mercer didn't need it anymore. His body had learned the rhythm of exhaustion, the kind that wakes you 3 minutes before the buzzer, already tense, already calculating the day ahead. He lay there in the darkness of his new bedroom, staring at a ceiling he still didn't recognize, listening to the unfamiliar creaks of a house that wasn't quite home yet. Across the hall, his daughter slept. 6 years old, curled beneath a frozen blanket in a room still half filled with unpacked boxes. Her name was Sophie, and she was the only reason Daniel got out of bed most mornings. He pushed himself upright, bare feet hitting cold hardwood. The house was small: 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that needed updating, and a backyard with a fence that leaned like it had given up years ago. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. His and Sophie's, no one else's. The divorce had been finalized 4 months ago. The move happened 3 weeks after that. Daniel didn't talk about it much. Not to his brother, not to his coworkers, not even to himself. There wasn't much to say. His ex-wife Miranda had wanted a different life, a bigger life. And Daniel, with his steady job as a high school history teacher and his quiet, predictable routines, hadn't been part of that vision. She'd kept the condo in the city. He'd taken Sophie. That was the deal. That was the trade. And Daniel would make that trade 1,000 times over. He moved through the morning with practiced efficiency. Shower, coffee. 2 slices of toast he barely tasted. By 6:30, he was standing outside Sophie's door, knocking gently. "Soph? Time to wake up, sweetheart." A small groan from inside. Then silence. Daniel smiled despite himself. "I'm making pancakes." "Liar," came the muffled voice. "Okay, fine. Cereal, but the good kind." Another groan, but this one had movement behind it. Daniel heard the shuffle of blankets, the soft thump of small feet hitting the floor. Victory. By 7:15, they were both dressed. Sophie sat at the kitchen table in her school uniform, spooning Cheerios into her mouth while staring at nothing in particular. Her blonde hair, so much like her mother's, was pulled into a lopsided ponytail that Daniel had done his best with. He'd watched 3 YouTube tutorials on how to braid hair, but Sophie's patience usually ran out before his skills caught up. "Do I have art today?" Sophie asked, not looking up. "Thursday, so yeah." "I need glue sticks." Daniel paused mid-sip of his coffee. "How many do you have?" "None." "What happened to the ones we bought last week?" Sophie shrugged. "Mason ate one." Daniel closed his eyes. "Mason ate a glue stick. He said it smelled like apples." "Did you tell the teacher?" "She already knows. Mason eats stuff." Daniel made a mental note to stop by the drugstore after school. He grabbed his keys from the counter, checked his watch, and moved toward the door. "Finish up, Soph. We've got 10 minutes. "Can I bring Mr. Whiskers?" "He's a stuffed cat. He doesn't need to go to 1st grade." "He gets lonely." Daniel looked at his daughter, really looked at her. She was staring down at her cereal bowl, shoulders slightly hunched, fingers gripping her spoon a little too tightly. She'd been doing that more lately. The small requests, the invisible anxieties, the need for things to feel safe. He softened. "Okay, but he stays in your backpack." Sophie's face lit up. "Thanks, Dad." And just like that, the tightness in Daniel's chest eased, just a little. They left the house at 7:28. Daniel locked the door behind them, backpack slung over one shoulder, Sophie's hand tucked into his. The morning air was cool and clean, the kind of early autumn chill that hadn't quite turned bitter yet. Leaves were just beginning to turn at the edges. yellow and rust creeping into the green. The neighborhood was quiet. Modest houses lined both sides of the street, each with neat lawns and driveways that had seen better days. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't new, but it was safe. That had been Daniel's only requirement when he'd started looking for a place to rent. A good school district, low crime, a place where Sophie could ride her bike someday without him holding his breath. They walked toward the car parked in the driveway. A 10-year-old Honda Accord with a scratch on the bumper and a check engine light that had been on for 2 months. Daniel made another mental note. Get that looked at. Eventually. As he opened the back door for Sophie, movement caught his eye. Across the yard. Next door. A woman stepped out onto her porch. Daniel had seen her before, brief glimpses over the past few weeks. She lived in the house directly adjacent to his, a single-story home with clean lines and a well-kept garden. He didn't know her name, hadn't introduced himself yet. There hadn't been time, and honestly, Daniel had been too exhausted to think about neighbors. But this morning, for some reason, he looked. She was standing on her porch in a simple white blouse and dark jeans, holding a ceramic mug in both hands. Her hair was dark, pulled back loosely, and she looked still. That was the word that came to Daniel's mind. Still. Like someone who didn't need to rush, who didn't need to prove anything. She was beautiful in a way that didn't demand attention, elegant without trying, and she was looking right at him. Their eyes met. Daniel froze, one hand still on the car door. He didn't know why. It wasn't like he'd been caught doing anything wrong, but there was something in her gaze, something calm and assessing and almost knowing. She didn't smile, didn't wave, just looked at him with the kind of quiet confidence that made Daniel feel like she could see straight through him. Then, slowly, she raised her mug in a small, silent greeting. Daniel, flustered, nodded back. Too quick. Too awkward. He immediately busied himself with buckling Sophie into her car seat, cheeks warm for reasons he didn't want to examine. "Who's that?" Sophie asked, craning her neck to look. "Neighbor," Daniel muttered. "She's pretty. Get your seatbelt on." By the time Daniel straightened up and closed the door, the woman was gone. The porch was empty, the front door shut. Daniel stood there for a moment longer than necessary, staring at the space where she'd been. Then he shook his head, climbed into the driver's seat, and started the car. The days blurred together after that. Drop Sophie off at school, drive to work, teach 4 classes of disinterested teenagers about the Civil War and Reconstruction. Grade papers during lunch. Pick Sophie up at 3:15. Homework, dinner, bath time, bedtime stories. Collapse. Repeat. Daniel wasn't unhappy. He was just tired. Tired in a way that sleep didn't fix. Tired in a way that had nothing to do with his body and everything to do with the weight of doing it all alone. He missed having someone to share the load with. Not Miranda. He didn't miss her, not really. But he missed the idea of partnership, the small conversations at the end of the day, the shared glances when Sophie said something funny, the feeling of not being the only adult in the room. But that wasn't his reality anymore. So he kept moving, kept going, kept showing up. And every morning, without meaning to, Daniel found himself glancing toward the house next door. Sometimes the woman was there. Sometimes she wasn't. But when she was, standing on her porch with her tea, or kneeling in her garden, or simply walking to her car, Daniel noticed. He told himself it didn't mean anything. She was just a neighbor, a stranger, someone he'd probably never actually speak to. But there was something about her presence that felt steady, solid, like she wasn't performing for anyone, like she didn't need to. And Daniel, who spent every waking moment performing the role of competent single dad, found that steadiness strangely comforting. It happened on a Tuesday. Daniel woke up earlier than usual, 5:30 instead of 5:47. He'd been having trouble sleeping lately, his mind too restless, too full of things he couldn't quite name. He gave up on sleep around 5:20 and dragged himself out of bed. The house was dark, silent. Sophie wouldn't be up for another hour. Daniel stood in the kitchen, waiting for the coffee maker to finish its slow, methodical drip. He stared out the window above the sink, the one that faced the side yard, and beyond that, the neighbor's house. The sky was just beginning to lighten, soft, gray, quiet. And then he saw her. She was in her kitchen. The light was on, warm and golden against the cool dawn outside. She stood at her own sink, hands wrapped around a mug, staring out her window, staring at nothing. Or so Daniel thought. He watched her without meaning to. There was something hypnotic about the scene. The stillness of it, the peace. She looked like someone who had nowhere to be, no one to perform for. Just existing, comfortably, calmly. Daniel felt something twist in his chest. Not desire, not quite. It was deeper than that. Longing, maybe. For what she seemed to have, for that kind of quiet. He didn't realize he'd been staring for almost a full minute until she turned her head and looked directly at him. Daniel's heart stopped. Their eyes locked across the yards, across the early morning stillness, through 2 panes of glass. He should have looked away, should have pretended he'd been doing something else, but he didn't. Couldn't. She didn't look surprised, didn't look offended. She just held his gaze, and then slowly she smiled. Not a big smile, not performative, just a small soft curve of her lips. And then she mouthed 2 words. "Do you want to see?" Daniel's breath caught. Before he could process what she meant, before he could even think about responding, she reached up and gently, deliberately, closed her curtain. The golden light disappeared. The window went dark. And Daniel was left standing in his own kitchen, heart pounding, coffee forgotten, staring at a closed curtain and wondering what the hell just happened. He couldn't stop thinking about it. All through the morning routine, making breakfast, getting Sophie dressed, the drive to school. Daniel's mind kept circling back to that moment, to her eyes, to her smile, to those 2 words. Do you want to see? See what? Her life? Her space? Her peace? Or something else entirely? It wasn't suggestive. It hadn't felt flirtatious. It had felt invitational, like she was offering him a glimpse of something real, something he'd been missing. But then she'd closed the curtain, and Daniel didn't know if that was a rejection or a test. He dropped Sophie off at school in a daze, barely hearing her chatter about art class and glue sticks. He drove to work on autopilot, his hands on the wheel, his mind somewhere else entirely. By lunch, he'd convinced himself he was overreacting. She was just being friendly, neighborly. He'd been staring into her kitchen like a creep, and she'd handled it with grace instead of calling the cops. That was all. But by the end of the day, when he picked Sophie up and drove home, Daniel's stomach was in knots. He told himself he wouldn't look. He told himself it didn't matter. But as he pulled into his driveway and helped Sophie out of the car, his eyes betrayed him. He looked. Her car was in the driveway. Lights were on inside the house. She was home. Daniel's pulse quickened. "Dad, I'm hungry," Sophie announced, tugging on his hand. Yeah, okay, let's get inside." He unlocked the door, ushered Sophie in, and went through the motions of making dinner. Mac and cheese, apple slices, a juice box. But his mind wasn't on the food, it was on the woman next door, and the question she'd asked without words. It happened after Sophie was in bed. Daniel had read her 3 stories, sung her 1 terrible lullaby, and finally gotten her to sleep by 8:30. He'd cleaned the kitchen, folded a load of laundry, and tried to watch TV. But he couldn't focus. By 9:15, he was standing at his own kitchen window again, staring at the dark curtain across the way. And that's when he heard it. A knock. Soft, deliberate, on his front door. Daniel's heart slammed into his throat. He moved through the house slowly, every step feeling surreal. Who knocked on doors at 9:15 on a Tuesday? No one. No one he knew, anyway. He reached the door, paused, took a breath, then opened it. She stood on his porch. The woman from next door. Up close now. Real. She was smaller than he'd expected, maybe 5'6", dark hair falling just past her shoulders, eyes that were warm and brown and impossibly calm. She wore the same jeans from that morning, a soft gray cardigan wrapped around her shoulders. She looked at him, really looked, and then she spoke. "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable this morning." Her voice was low, steady, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to be heard. Daniel blinked. "You what?" "No, I'm the one who should apologize. I was staring. I didn't mean to." She held up a hand, stopping him gently. You weren't staring. You were looking. There's a difference. Daniel didn't know what to say to that. She smiled, small, kind. I'm Elena. Elena Whitmore. I live next door. Danielson, he managed. Daniel Mercer. I know. He frowned. You do? I saw your name on a package once. The mailman left it on my porch by mistake. She tilted her head slightly. You're a teacher. How did you... You have a world's okayest teacher mug. I saw it through your window. Daniel felt his face heat. Right, yeah. My brother got me that. Elena's smile widened just a fraction. I like it. It's honest. There was a pause. Not awkward, just present. Can I ask you something? Elena said. Sure. This morning, when you looked at me, what did you see? Daniel hesitated. It was a strange question, intimate in a way that didn't match the fact that they'd just met. But something about the way she asked it, the openness, the lack of judgment, made him want to answer honestly. Peace, he said finally. I saw someone who looked at peace. Elena's expression shifted. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. That's a kind thing to say. It's true. She studied him for a long moment. Then she glanced past him, into the house. You have a daughter. Sophie. She's 6. And her mother? Daniel's jaw tightened. Not in the picture. Not anymore. Elena nodded slowly. She didn't offer pity, didn't say she was sorry. She just accepted the information like it was a fact, not a tragedy. That must be hard, she said simply. It is. Another pause. Then Elena reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. She held it out to him. I don't usually do this, she said, but if you ever need help with anything, my number's on here. I mean it. Anything. Daniel took the paper, fingers brushing hers briefly. The touch was electric in its simplicity. Why? He asked. Elena met his eyes. Because I know what it's like to do everything alone. And I know how much it helps to have someone who just sees you. Before Daniel could respond, she stepped back. Good night, Daniel. Good night. She turned and walked back across the yard, moving with that same quiet grace he'd noticed before. Daniel stood in the doorway, watching until she disappeared into her house. Then he looked down at the paper in his hand. A phone number. Nothing else. He closed the door, leaned against it, and for the first time in months, Daniel Mercer smiled. The next morning, Daniel didn't look through the window. He didn't need to, because when he stepped outside with Sophie at 7:30, Elena was standing on her porch, waiting. She raised her mug in that same silent greeting, and this time, Daniel raised his hand back. Sophie noticed. Of course she did. Is that the pretty lady? Daniel cleared his throat. Her name's Elena. Can I meet her? Maybe. Someday. Why not now? Because we're late for school. Sophie huffed, but didn't argue. They got in the car, buckled up, and drove away. But as Daniel pulled out of the driveway, he glanced in the rearview mirror. Elena was still standing there, still watching, and Daniel realized something that both terrified and thrilled him. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. 3 days later, the fence finally gave up. Daniel had been meaning to fix it for weeks. The section along the side yard had been leaning precariously since they moved in, held together by rust and prayers. But he'd been too busy, too tired, too overwhelmed by everything else to deal with it. Then Saturday morning arrived, and Sophie decided she wanted to play outside. Dad, can I use the swing? Daniel looked up from his laptop where he'd been trying to plan next week's lessons. What swing? The one in the backyard. Soph, we don't have a swing. We could get one. Maybe. Someday. That's what you always say. She wasn't wrong. Daniel sighed, closed his laptop, and followed his daughter outside. The backyard was small but serviceable. Overgrown grass, a few scattered toys Sophie had brought from the old place, and that damn fence, leaning like a drunk at last call. Okay, Daniel said. I'll look into getting a swing. But first, I need to fix this. A loud crack interrupted him. The fence section gave up entirely, collapsing sideways into the yard with a splintering crash. Sophie's eyes went wide. Oops! Yeah. Oops. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, surveying the damage. Great. One more thing he didn't have time or money to deal with. He'd need wood, tools, skills he didn't really have. Need a hand? Daniel turned. Elena stood at the property line, hands in the pockets of her jeans, looking at the collapsed fence with mild amusement. Daniel stammered. I didn't know you were... I was in my garden. Heard the crash. She stepped closer, examining the wreckage. That's not a small job. Yeah, I know. I'll figure it out. Elena glanced at him. Do you know how to build a fence? Daniel hesitated. YouTube exists. She smiled. That's not an answer. Then no, not really. I do. Daniel blinked. You do? I rebuilt my entire back fence 2 years ago. It's not hard, just tedious. You rebuilt a fence by yourself. Why is that surprising? I don't know, Daniel stopped, realizing how condescending he sounded. I'm sorry. That was dumb. Elena's expression softened. It's fine. Most people make assumptions. She looked back at the fence. I have extra wood in my shed and tools. If you want help, I'm free this afternoon. Daniel should have said no, should have insisted he could handle it, should have maintained some shred of masculine pride. But he was tired, and she was offering, and something about the way she stood there, calm, capable, not judging him, made it impossible to refuse. I'd appreciate that, he said. Really? Elena nodded. 2 o'clock? 2 o'clock. She showed up at exactly 2 p.m. with a toolbox, work gloves, and a confidence that made Daniel feel both inadequate and grateful. Sophie had been shipped off to a play date with a school friend, giving Daniel a rare afternoon without responsibilities. He changed into old jeans and a t-shirt, ready to prove he could at least be useful. Elena surveyed the damage, hands on her hips. Okay, first, we need to pull out the old posts. They're rotted. Won't hold anything. Got it. They worked in comfortable silence at first. Elena showed him how to dig around the base of each post, how to leverage them out without breaking his back. Daniel followed her instructions, surprised by how methodical and patient she was. You really did this yourself? He asked after 20 minutes. Twice, actually. First time I messed it up. Had to start over. What happened? I didn't check if the posts were level. Whole thing leaned sideways. Daniel laughed. That makes me feel better. Elena smiled. Everyone screws up their first fence. It's tradition. As they worked, Daniel found himself relaxing. There was something grounding about physical labor, about working beside someone who didn't need him to be anything other than helpful. Can I ask you something? Daniel said after a while. Sure. Why'd you rebuild your fence? Was it broken? Elena paused, setting down her shovel. No, it was fine. But it was the fence that came with the house when I bought it, and I wanted to build something myself, something that was mine. That makes sense. Does it? Yeah. After the divorce, I threw out half the furniture. Not because it was bad, just because it reminded me of her. Elena nodded slowly. Fresh starts are important. Is that what you're doing here? Fresh start? She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time Daniel saw something beneath the calm exterior, something guarded. Something like that, she said. They returned to work. By 5 p.m., the new posts were in. By 6:30, the horizontal rails were attached. By the time the sun started to set, they'd built a fence that was sturdy, level, and honestly better than Daniel had any right to expect. They stood back, admiring their work. Not bad, Elena said. Not bad? This is amazing. I could never have done this alone. Sure you could have. Just would have taken longer. And looked way worse. Elena laughed. It was the first time Daniel had heard her really laugh. The sound was warm, genuine. It made something in his chest tighten. Thank you, he said. Seriously, you didn't have to do this. I wanted to. Why? Elena turned to face him fully. Dirt on her jeans, hair slightly mussed, eyes tired but bright. Because, she said simply, you looked like you needed help, and I know what it's like to need help and not ask for it. Daniel held her gaze. Something passed between them, unspoken, understood. Elena, don't, she said gently. Don't make it complicated. Let it just be what it is. And what is it? She smiled. Neighbors helping neighbors. Daniel nodded, even though he knew, they both knew, it was already more than that. After that, things shifted. Not dramatically, not obviously, but shifted nonetheless. Elena started appearing more often, not intrusively, just present. She'd wave when Daniel left for work. She'd smile when he came home. Once, she brought over a package that had been delivered to her house by mistake. And once, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, she knocked on his door holding 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this, she said. Daniel, who'd been drowning in ungraded essays, accepted it like a lifeline. You're a saint. Hardly. She didn't leave, just stood there on his porch, sipping her own coffee, looking out at the rain. Daniel joined her. They stood in silence, watching the water pour down. Do you ever miss it? Elena asked after a while. Miss what? Being married, having someone. Daniel considered the question. Sometimes. Not her, just the idea of not being alone. Elena nodded. I understand that. Were you married? No, but I was with someone once, for a long time. What happened? He wanted control. I wanted freedom. She paused. Those 2 things don't mix well. Daniel glanced at her. Do you regret it, leaving? Not for a second. The certainty in her voice surprised him, made him envious even. I wish I had that confidence, he admitted. You do. You just don't see it yet. How do you figure? Elena turned to face him. You left a marriage that wasn't working. You chose your daughter over comfort. You moved to a new place and started over. That takes guts, Daniel. He didn't know what to say, so he just stood there, coffee warming his hands, rain falling around them, and let her words sink in. Sophie met Elena by accident. It was a Saturday morning. Daniel was making pancakes, real ones this time, when Sophie wandered into the kitchen, still in her pajamas. Can I play outside? After breakfast. But I'm not hungry. You will be when you smell these pancakes. Sophie sighed dramatically, but she stayed. 10 minutes later, they were both sitting at the table, syrup and butter between them, when there was a knock at the door. Daniel frowned. Who knocks at 9 a.m. on a Saturday? He opened the door to find Elena standing there, holding a basket of fresh tomatoes. From my garden, she explained. I grew way too many. Thought you might want some. Before Daniel could respond, Sophie appeared at his elbow. Are you Elena? Elena's eyebrows rose. She looked at Daniel, amused. You've mentioned me? She's observant, Daniel muttered. Sophie pushed past her father, staring up at Elena with unfiltered curiosity. You're the pretty lady who helped Dad fix the fence. Elena crouched down to Sophie's level, smiling. And you're Sophie. How'd you know my name? Your dad talks about you. Sophie looked delighted. He does? All the time. Sophie turned to Daniel, grinning. Dad, can Elena have pancakes? Daniel opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Elena helplessly. Elena met his eyes. There was a question there, an opening. If it's not an imposition, she said carefully. It's not, Daniel said, and meant it. They ate pancakes together. Elena sat at Daniel's small kitchen table, Sophie chattering away about school and art class and a boy named Mason who ate glue. Daniel watched his daughter bloom under Elena's attention, the way she listened, the way she asked questions, the way she made Sophie feel heard. Do you have kids? Sophie asked at one point. No, Elena said gently. Do you want them? Sophie, Daniel warned, but Elena just smiled. I never really thought about it, but I like you. Sophie beamed. I like you too. After breakfast, Sophie dragged Elena outside to see the fence they'd built. Daniel followed, coffee in hand, watching as his daughter explained in great detail how fences worked according to her 6-year-old logic. Elena listened like it was the most important lecture she'd ever heard, and Daniel realized something that scared him. He was falling, not in love, not yet, but into something that felt safe and terrifying all at once. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Daniel sat on his back porch, staring at the fence he and Elena had built. His phone buzzed. A text. From Elena. Thank you for the pancakes and for letting me meet Sophie. She's wonderful. Daniel smiled. Thank you for the tomatoes and for being patient with her questions. A pause. Then, she asked good questions. Daniel typed, deleted, typed again. Can I ask you something? Always. Why are you doing this? Helping me. Spending time with us. You don't owe me anything. The response took longer this time. Because loneliness recognizes loneliness, Daniel, and I'd rather we be less lonely together. Daniel stared at the screen, then he typed 4 words. I'd like that too. Outside, the night was quiet. Inside, something was beginning, and Daniel Mercer, for the first time in a very long time, felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't carrying everything alone anymore. The weeks that followed moved like water, slow at first, then gathering momentum in ways Daniel didn't quite notice until he was already caught in the current. It started with small things, a text here and there, Elena asking if he needed anything from the store when she was already out, Daniel offering to pick up her mail when he saw the postal truck drive by. Little gestures that meant nothing and everything at the same time. Sophie became the bridge between them, as children often do. She'd see Elena in the yard and run over without hesitation, chattering about whatever had captured her imagination that day. And Elena, who Daniel was learning had more patience than anyone he'd ever met, would listen like Sophie's stories about playground politics and missing crayons were matters of international importance. She's attached to you, Daniel said one afternoon, watching through the kitchen window as Sophie showed Elena a drawing she'd made at school. Elena had come over to help him figure out why his garbage disposal kept making a grinding noise. She'd fixed it in 10 minutes with a wrench and a flashlight while Daniel mostly stood there feeling useless. I'm attached to her too, Elena said, wiping her hands on a towel. She's got a good heart. She does. I just don't want her to be a bother. Elena looked at him sharply. She's not. And you need to stop apologizing for taking up space, Daniel. He blinked. I didn't realize I was doing that. You do it constantly. Every time you ask for help. Every time Sophie wants attention. Every time you exist around other people. She softened. It's like you think you're an inconvenience just by being here. Daniel felt something crack open in his chest. My ex-wife used to say I was too much, too needy, too... Your ex-wife was wrong. The certainty in Elena's voice stopped him cold. You don't know that, he said quietly. I do. Because I've watched you for weeks now, and you're one of the least demanding people I've ever met. You carry everything yourself. You never ask for help unless someone forces it on you, and you apologize for things that don't need apologies. She stepped closer. That's not being too much, Daniel. That's being too little to yourself. He didn't know what to say, so he just stood there, throat tight, wondering how this woman he'd known for less than 2 months could see him more clearly than people he'd known for years. Thank you, he managed finally. Elena smiled. You're welcome. Now stop breaking your garbage disposal. It broke itself. Uh-huh. What did you put down there? Daniel hesitated. Potato peels? Daniel. Sophie said it was fine. Elena laughed, that real warm laugh that made his entire kitchen feel brighter. Never trust a 6-year-old's understanding of plumbing. But October bled into November. The air turned colder. Leaves covered the yards in blankets of red and gold. Daniel started keeping his porch light on later because Elena often sat outside in the evenings, reading with a blanket across her lap. And somehow it felt wrong to let her sit in the dark. They fell into a rhythm. Coffee on Saturday mornings, sometimes at his place, sometimes at hers. Dinners that happened almost by accident when one of them cooked too much and invited the other over. Conversations that started about nothing and ended hours later, both of them surprised by how much time had passed. Daniel learned things about her in fragments. She didn't talk about herself easily, never volunteered information. But if he asked the right questions, gently, without pushing, she'd open up in small, careful ways. She'd grown up in a small town in Oregon, moved to Seattle in her 20s, built a career in tech when the industry was still exploding. She didn't say what she did exactly, just that she'd worked for a large company and eventually left. Burned out? Daniel asked one night. They were sitting on his porch, Sophie asleep inside, the neighborhood quiet except for distant traffic. Something like that, Elena said. She was holding a mug of tea, steam rising in the cold air. I spent 15 years building something. And then I realized I'd built a prison. That must have been hard, walking away. It was the easiest thing I've ever done. Daniel studied her profile in the dim light. Do you miss it? The work? No. The purpose? She paused. Sometimes. What do you do now? Elena smiled faintly. I exist. I garden. I read. I fix garbage disposals for forgetful teachers. Sounds peaceful. It is. Most days. And the other days? She looked at him then, something unguarded in her eyes. The other days, I wonder if peace is just another word for hiding. Daniel understood that, more than she probably knew. I don't think you're hiding, he said. What am I doing then? Healing. Elena held his gaze. The moment stretched between them, heavy with things neither of them knew how to say. Then she stood, setting down her mug. I should go. Early morning tomorrow. Yeah, of course. She paused at the top of the porch steps. Daniel? Yeah? You're healing too. You know that, right? He nodded, even though he wasn't sure he believed it. Elena smiled. Good night. Good night, Elena. He watched her cross the yard, disappearing into her house, and he sat there long after she was gone, wondering when exactly she'd stopped being just his neighbor and started being something more. Thanksgiving arrived with the kind of pressure Daniel had been dreading. Miranda wanted Sophie for the holiday. It was her year, according to the custody agreement, and Daniel had spent 3 weeks mentally preparing himself to spend the day alone. You could come with us, Sophie had offered the week before, her small voice hopeful. That's sweet, Soph. But this is your time with your mom. But what will you do? I'll be fine. I'll watch football, eat leftover pizza. Very exciting. Sophie didn't look convinced. Neither was Daniel, honestly, but he wasn't about to guilt-trip his daughter into worrying about him. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving, he dropped Sophie off at Miranda's new place across town, a sleek condo with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that looked like it cost more than Daniel's car. Miranda's new boyfriend answered the door, all white teeth and expensive cologne. Hey man, the boyfriend said, like they were old friends instead of strangers navigating an awkward situation. She's all packed? Yeah, everything's in the bag. Sophie hugged Daniel's legs. I'm gonna miss you, Dad. I'll miss you too, kiddo, but you're going to have a great time. Will you be lonely? Daniel crouched down, meeting her eyes. I'll be fine, promise. Miranda appeared behind the boyfriend, looking polished and perfect as always. Sophie, sweetie, come inside, it's cold. Sophie hesitated, then kissed Daniel's cheek and ran inside. Miranda lingered at the door. She worries about you. I know. Maybe you should get out more. Meet people. Daniel bristled. I'm doing fine. I didn't say you weren't. She sighed. Never mind. Have a good Thanksgiving, Daniel. You too. The drive home was quiet. The house felt emptier than usual. Daniel stood in his kitchen, staring at a fridge full of nothing, and tried not to feel pathetic. His phone buzzed, a text from Elena. What are you doing for Thanksgiving? Daniel typed back. Nothing. Sophie's with her mom. Come over. He stared at the screen. I don't want to intrude. You're not. I'm cooking anyway. Might as well have company. Daniel hesitated, then typed, Are you sure? Very. 2 p.m. Don't bring anything. I have to bring something. Fine. Bring wine, but nothing fancy. I'm not fancy. Daniel smiled despite himself. Deal. Thanksgiving afternoon, Daniel showed up at Elena's door, holding a bottle of red wine he'd spent way too long picking out at the store. He'd changed clothes 3 times, settled on jeans and a sweater, then second-guessed the whole thing. It's just dinner, he told himself. With a friend. A neighbor. Except it didn't feel like just dinner. Elena opened the door in an apron, flour dusting her hands. Her hair was pulled back, and she looked flushed from the heat of the kitchen. "Perfect timing," she said. "I'm about to fight with a pie crust." "Need backup?" Desperately. He followed her inside, and the smell hit him immediately. Roasted turkey, herbs, something sweet baking. The house was warm and lived in, nothing like the sterile perfection of Miranda's place. Elena's home was simple but comfortable. Hardwood floors, soft furniture, bookshelves lining the walls. Everything felt intentional without being showy. "I may have overcooked," Elena admitted, gesturing to the kitchen counter covered in dishes. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, green beans, cranberry sauce, and 2 pies because I couldn't decide. Daniel laughed. "This is incredible. You did all this yourself? Don't sound so surprised." "I'm not. I'm just impressed." Elena smiled. "Well, don't be impressed yet. The pie crust is currently winning." Daniel rolled up his sleeves. "Show me the enemy." They spent the next hour working side by side. Elena taught him how to crimp pie edges properly. Daniel told her about the time he tried to make a turkey in college and nearly burned down his apartment. They laughed. They bumped elbows, reaching for the same utensil. They existed in each other's space like they'd been doing it for years. By the time everything was ready, the sun was setting. They sat at Elena's small dining table, plates full, candles lit between them. "This feels very adult," Daniel said. Elena raised an eyebrow. "As opposed to?" "I don't know. Most of my meals involve chicken nuggets and negotiations." "Sophie's a tough negotiator?" "You have no idea. Last week she convinced me that ice cream was a vegetable because it has milk." Elena laughed. "That's solid logic." "It's terrible logic, but she delivered it with such confidence I couldn't argue." They ate slowly, talked easily. Daniel realized he couldn't remember the last time he'd had a meal that felt this peaceful. No rush, no obligations, just food and conversation and the comfortable silence that comes when two people don't need to fill every gap. "Can I ask you something personal?" Elena said eventually. "Sure." "What happened with your marriage?" "You don't have to answer. I'm just curious." Daniel set down his fork, considering. "Honestly, we grew apart. Or maybe we were never really together in the first place. We wanted different things. She wanted excitement, adventure, spontaneity. I wanted stability. And when Sophie came along, that gap just got wider." "Do you regret it? The marriage?" "No, because I got Sophie, but I regret not seeing the signs sooner. I regret trying to force something that wasn't working." Elena nodded slowly. "That takes courage. Admitting something isn't working." "Didn't feel like courage. Felt like failure." "They're not mutually exclusive." Daniel looked at her. "What about you? You said you were with someone once?" Elena's expression shifted, something guarded sliding into place. "I was. For almost 10 years. "What was he like?" "Ambitious, brilliant, controlling." She paused. "He saw me as a project, something to shape, and I let him for a long time." "What changed?" "I realized I'd stopped recognizing myself. I was making decisions based on what he wanted, what he thought was best. And one day I woke up and didn't know who I was anymore." She met Daniel's eyes. "So I left, walked away from everything we'd built together." "That must have been terrifying." "It was liberating." "Do you ever talk to him?" Elena's jaw tightened slightly. "No, he's persistent, likes to keep tabs on things he thinks belong to him, but I've made it clear we're done." Daniel heard something in her voice, something harder than usual. "Does he bother you?" "Not anymore. I made sure of that." There was a weight to those words. Daniel wanted to ask more, but something in Elena's posture told him she'd shared enough. "Well," he said lightly, "for what it's worth, I'm glad you left. Otherwise, I'd still have a broken garbage disposal." Elena smiled, tension easing. "True. Your plumbing needs me." "More than my plumbing." The words came out before Daniel could stop them. Elena's eyes widened slightly, then softened. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Mine too." They finished dinner, cleaned up together. Daniel washed while Elena dried, their movements synchronized like a dance they'd practiced. Do you want to watch a movie? Elena asked, hanging up the dish towel. I should probably get home. Why? Daniel opened his mouth, closed it. He didn't have a good reason. The house would be empty. Sophie wouldn't be back until Sunday. He had nowhere to be. Okay, he said. Yeah, a movie sounds good. They settled on the couch, not touching, but close enough that Daniel could feel the warmth of her presence. Elena put on something old and comfortable, a classic neither of them had seen in years. Halfway through, Daniel felt his eyes getting heavy. The food, the wine, the comfort of Elena's living room. It all combined into a drowsiness he couldn't fight. You can sleep if you want, Elena said softly. I'm not sleeping. Your eyes are closed. I'm resting them, she laughed quietly. Okay, Daniel. He didn't mean to fall asleep, but somewhere between the movie's second act and the credits, exhaustion won. When he woke up, the room was darker. The movie had ended, and there was a blanket draped over him that hadn't been there before. Elena sat in the armchair across from him, reading by lamplight. How long was I out? Daniel asked, voice rough with sleep. About an hour. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to Stop apologizing. Elena set down her book. You needed rest. You got it. That's allowed. Daniel sat up, rubbing his face. I should go. You don't have to. Elena, I know, I'm just saying you don't have to. She stood, moving toward the kitchen. Want coffee? Or are you planning to actually sleep tonight? Daniel checked his watch. Almost 10 p.m. Coffee sounds good, actually. They ended up back at the kitchen table, mugs between them, talking until well past midnight. About everything and nothing. About Sophie's upcoming winter concert. About Elena's garden plans for spring. About the book Elena was reading and whether Daniel would like it. You should borrow it, Elena said, when I'm done. I'm a slow reader. That's fine. I'm not going anywhere. The words hung in the air, simple, but weighted with promise. Daniel met her eyes. Neither am I. Elena smiled, not her usual small, controlled smile, but something wider, more open. Good, she said. When Daniel finally left around 1 a.m., walking across the dark yard to his empty house, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. The Friday after Thanksgiving, Daniel woke to his phone ringing. Sophie's face filled the screen. Hey kiddo, how's it going? Dad! Sophie's voice was bright but strained. Can you come get me? Daniel sat up, instantly alert. What's wrong? Are you okay? I'm fine. I just miss you. And Mom said I can come home early if I want. Daniel heard Miranda's voice in the background, muffled. Then Sophie again. Please, Dad. Of course. I'll be there in 30 minutes. He threw on clothes, grabbed his keys, and made the drive across town. Miranda met him at the door, Sophie already packed and waiting. She's been asking for you since yesterday, Miranda said, not unkindly. I can take her for the rest of the weekend if that's easier. That's fine. Honestly, Brad and I could use some time anyway. She paused. She talks about your neighbor a lot. Elena? Daniel tensed. They're friends. I'm not judging. I think it's good. Sophie needs stable people in her life. She has stable people. I know. I just mean... Miranda sighed. Never mind. Have a good weekend, Daniel. Sophie launched herself into his arms the moment they got to the car. I missed you so much, Dad. I missed you too, Soph. Did you have a good Thanksgiving? I did. Elena made dinner. Sophie's eyes lit up. Really? Was it good? It was amazing. Can we see her today? Daniel hesitated. Maybe. Let's see what she's up to. As it turned out, Elena was raking leaves in her yard when they pulled up. Sophie bolted from the car before Daniel could even turn off the engine. Elena! Elena looked up, breaking into a smile. Sophie! You're back early. I missed my dad. I bet he missed you too. Sophie grabbed Elena's hand. Can I help you rake? Elena glanced at Daniel, who shrugged helplessly. If your dad says it's okay. It's fine, Daniel said. I'll make lunch. You two have fun. He watched from this kitchen window as Sophie helped Elena rake leaves, which mostly involved jumping in the piles Elena had just made. But Elena didn't seem to mind. She laughed. She built bigger piles for Sophie to destroy. She played like someone who understood that perfection mattered less than joy. And Daniel, making sandwiches in his kitchen, felt something dangerous taking root in his chest. This feeling, this life. He wanted it, not just for himself, but for Sophie too. He wanted Elena in their lives, not as a neighbor, not as a friend, as something more. The realization should have terrified him. Instead, it felt inevitable, like he'd been walking toward this moment since the day he saw her standing in her kitchen window, offering him a glimpse of peace. When Sophie finally came inside an hour later, covered in leaves and grinning, Elena followed. Sorry, Elena said. I think I exhausted her. That's impossible. Sophie doesn't exhaust. Yes, I do, Sophie protested. I'm super tired. Can Elena stay for lunch? Daniel looked at Elena. Can you? If you're sure. I'm sure. They ate sandwiches. Sophie talked nonstop about her Thanksgiving, about the parade she watched, about how Mom's boyfriend didn't know how to carve a turkey and made a mess. Elena listened with patience Daniel envied. After lunch, Sophie went to her room to play. Daniel and Elena cleaned up together, another routine they'd fallen into without discussion. She really did miss you, Elena said, drying plates. Yeah, she's usually okay with her mom, but lately she's been more clingy. Kids sense when their parents need them. Daniel glanced at her. You think she came home because she thought I needed her? I think she came home because you're her safe place. And maybe she wanted to make sure you were okay. The thought made Daniel's throat tight. I hate that she worries about me. She loves you. That's what love does. They finished cleaning in silence. Then Elena turned to him, leaning against the counter. Daniel? Yeah? I had a really good time yesterday. Me too. I don't usually spend holidays with people. I usually prefer being alone. But she paused. I'm glad I wasn't alone this year. Daniel stepped closer, heart pounding. Elena, I need to tell you something. She looked up at him, eyes dark and unreadable. Okay? I don't know what this is, between us, but it's not just friendship, not for me. And I think, he took a breath, I think it's not just friendship for you either. Elena didn't move, didn't speak. Daniel's courage wavered. If I'm wrong, tell me. I'll drop it. We can go back to just being neighbors, but I need to know if I'm reading this right. For a long moment, Elena just looked at him. Then she said very quietly, You're not wrong. Daniel's heart stuttered. I'm not? No. So what do we do about it? Elena's expression flickered, something vulnerable crossing her features. I don't know. I'm not good at this, Daniel. I've spent the last 5 years avoiding exactly this. Why? Because it's complicated. Because I have things in my past that could make your life harder. Because... She stopped herself. Because what? Because I'm scared. The admission seemed to cost her. Daniel could see it in the way her shoulders tensed, the way she looked away. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull back. When she didn't, he took her hand. I'm scared too, he said. I'm terrified. I have a daughter to think about. A life that's barely stable. I can't afford to mess this up. Then maybe we shouldn't... But I don't want to walk away from this. From you. He squeezed her hand gently. We don't have to rush. We don't have to define it. We take it slow. We figure it out together. Elena's eyes met his. Together? If you want. She was quiet for the long moment. Then slowly, she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Together. Daniel smiled. Yeah? Yeah. And standing in his small kitchen, their hands linked, the late afternoon sun filtering through the windows, Daniel felt something click into place. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, that didn't scare him. It felt right. December came with the kind of cold that settled into bones and refused to leave. Daniel woke each morning to frost on the windows and Sophie complaining about having to wear her winter coat. The holidays loomed ahead with all their complicated expectations, and for the first time in years, Daniel found himself actually looking forward to them. Things with Elena had shifted after Thanksgiving, though the shift was so subtle most people wouldn't have noticed. They still had coffee on Saturday mornings, still helped each other with small tasks around their houses, still existed in each other's lives in ways that looked, from the outside, exactly the same as before. But there were new things, too. Small touches that lingered, conversations that went deeper. The way Elena's hand would brush his when they reached for the same coffee mug. The way Daniel found excuses to be outside when he knew she'd be in her garden, even though there was nothing left to garden in December. Sophie noticed, of course. Children always do. "Are you and Elena dating?" she asked one morning while Daniel was braiding her hair for school. His hand stilled. "What makes you ask that?" "You smile more when she's around, and you get all weird and nervous." "I do not get weird and nervous." Sophie twisted to look at him. "Dad, you dropped a plate yesterday when she came over, and you never drop plates." Daniel sighed. "It's complicated, Soph." "Do you like her?" He met his daughter's eyes in the mirror, 6 years old and already too perceptive for his own good. "Yeah, I do." "Does she like you?" "I think so." Sophie grinned. "Good. I like her too. She's nice, and she doesn't treat me like a baby." "You are kind of a baby." "Dad!" Sophie swatted at him, laughing. Daniel finished her braid, his chest tight with emotions he couldn't quite name. Love for his daughter, gratitude that she accepted Elena so easily, fear that he might mess this up and hurt them both. "If we do date," he said carefully, "would that be okay with you?" Sophie thought about it with the seriousness only a 6-year-old can muster. "Will she be around more?" "Probably." "Will she still help me with art projects?" "I'm sure she would." "Then yeah, it's okay." Sophie paused. "But Dad?" "Yeah?" "Don't get married super fast like Mom did. That was weird." Daniel felt something crack in his chest. He pulled Sophie into a hug. "I promise, no rushing anything." "Okay, good. Can we have pancakes now?" "We're already late for school." "Pancakes make everything better, though." "That's not how time works, Soph." But he made pancakes anyway. They were 15 minutes late. It was worth it. What? The first real date happened almost by accident. Sophie was spending the weekend with Miranda again, and Daniel had resigned himself to another quiet couple of days alone. He was grading papers on his couch when Elena texted, "There's a Christmas market downtown. Want to come?" Daniel stared at his phone. They'd been dancing around this for weeks. Coffee wasn't a date. Fixing fences wasn't a date. But going to a Christmas market together? That felt intentional. That felt like crossing a line they'd both been carefully avoiding. He typed back before he could overthink it. "Pick you up in 20? I'll drive. You bought wine last time." "That was Thanksgiving." "And? We're keeping score now?" Daniel smiled. "Fine. 20 minutes. Elena's car surprised him. He'd expected something practical, maybe a sedan or a small SUV. Instead, she drove a vintage Mercedes, immaculately maintained deep blue, the kind of car that whispered wealth without shouting it. "Nice ride," Daniel said, sliding into the passenger seat. Elena shrugged, pulling away from the curb. "It was a gift to myself. After I left Seattle." "Some gift." "I spent 15 years driving practical cars because he said luxury was wasteful. So when I left, I bought the most impractical, beautiful car I could find." She glanced at him. "Petty?" "Justified." The drive downtown took 30 minutes. They talked easily about nothing important. The weather, Sophie's upcoming school concert, whether Die Hard counted as a Christmas movie. But underneath the casual conversation, Daniel felt the current of something bigger, something neither of them was quite ready to name. The Christmas market was crowded and bright, strung with lights that turned the cold December evening into something magical. Vendors sold everything from handmade ornaments to roasted chestnuts, and the air smelled like cinnamon and pine. Elena walked beside him, hands tucked into the pockets of her wool coat, her breath making small clouds in the cold air. She looked different here, away from their quiet street. More relaxed, more herself. Do you do this every year? Daniel asked, stopping at a booth selling hand-carved wooden toys. I used to when I first moved here. Then I stopped for a while. She picked up a small wooden horse, examining it. This year felt like the right time to start again. What changed? Elena set down the horse, meeting his eyes. I'm not alone this year. The words hit Daniel square in the chest. He wanted to say something meaningful, something that matched the weight of what she'd just admitted. But a vendor interrupted, asking if they needed help, and the moment passed. They wandered through the market for over an hour. Elena bought Sophie a hand-painted ornament shaped like a star. Daniel bought Elena a scarf he caught her eyeing at one of the stalls, deep green wool that brought out the warmth in her eyes. You didn't have to do that, she protested. I wanted to. Daniel, let me do nice things for you, Elena. Please. She looked at him for a long moment, then wrapped the scarf around her neck. Thank you. You're welcome. They stopped at a food truck selling hot chocolate and found a bench away from the crowds. The city sparkled around them, holiday lights reflecting off store windows, couples and families moving past in happy, oblivious clusters. This is nice, Elena said softly. Yeah, it is. I haven't done this in a long time. Just existed. Without planning or worrying or analyzing everything. Daniel took a sip of his hot chocolate. You seem like someone who analyzes everything. I am. It's exhausting. So stop. It's not that easy. Why not? Elena was quiet for a moment, her fingers wrapped around her cup. Because the last time I stopped analyzing, I ended up trapped in a relationship with someone who controlled every aspect of my life. So now I analyze everything. It's safer. Daniel set down his cup. Elena, I need you to know something. She looked at him. I'm not him. I don't want to control you. I don't want to change you. I just want to know you. I know that. Rationally, I know that. But I'm still scared. Daniel reached over slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand. That's okay. I'm scared too. We can be scared together. Elena's fingers tightened around his. What if I mess this up? What if you don't? She laughed, a short, slightly broken sound. You're very optimistic for someone going through a divorce. Divorced? Past tense, and I'm not optimistic. I'm just tired of letting fear make my decisions. When did you get so wise? I have a 6-year-old. She teaches me things. Elena smiled, her thumb brushing across his knuckles. They sat like that for a while, hands linked, watching the Christmas market move around them. And Daniel thought maybe this was what happiness felt like. Not fireworks or grand gestures, just sitting on a cold bench, holding hands with someone who saw him completely and chose him anyway. Then Elena's phone rang. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and her entire body went rigid. What's wrong? Daniel asked. Elena stared at the phone like it was a live grenade. It's him. Him? Victor, my ex. The name landed between them like a stone. Elena declined the call, but her hand was shaking slightly when she put the phone back in her pocket. Does he call often? Daniel asked carefully. Not anymore. I blocked his number 6 months ago. He must have gotten a new one. What does he want? Control. He always wants control. Elena stood abruptly. We should go. Elena? Please, Daniel. I just need to go. The drive home was quiet. Elena's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, her jaw tight. Daniel wanted to ask questions, wanted to help, but something in her posture told him to wait, to give her space. When they pulled up to their houses, Elena turned off the engine but didn't move. I'm sorry, she said finally. For what? For ruining the evening. You didn't ruin anything. I got weird and anxious because of a phone call. That's not normal. Daniel turned to face her. Elena, whatever history you have with this guy, it's okay. You don't have to apologize for it. He's not just history. He's... She trailed off, her hands gripping the steering wheel. He's complicated. Do you want to talk about it? Not tonight. Okay, then we won't. Elena looked at him, something vulnerable in her expression. You should probably know the truth about who I am, what I left behind. Only if you want to tell me. I don't want to, but you deserve to know. She took a breath. I'm not just someone who worked in tech, Daniel. I built a company, a very successful company. And when I left behind $3 billion. Daniel blinked. The number was so absurd he almost laughed. I'm sorry, what? I'm a billionaire. Or I was. I signed most of it away when I left. Gave it to people who deserved it more than I did, but I kept enough to live comfortably. Very comfortably. Daniel sat back, processing. You're serious? Yes. And this Victor guy was my business partner and my fiancé, until I realized he cared more about the company than he ever cared about me. Elena's voice was flat, emotionless. He didn't take the breakup well, especially when I walked away from everything we'd built. How long ago was this? 5 years? And he's still calling you? He's persistent. He thinks I owe him something, my attention, my obedience, maybe even myself. She looked at Daniel. I'm telling you this because if we're going to do this, whatever this is, you need to know what you're getting into. My life isn't simple. My past isn't simple. And Victor, she paused. Victor doesn't let go easily. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Do you have a good security system? Elena blinked. What? Security system, cameras, alarms, that kind of thing. Yes. Why? Good. Keep it on. And if he shows up, you call the police. Then you call me. Daniel, you don't understand. I understand that you're scared of someone from your past. And I understand that money doesn't make you any less deserving of safety and respect. He reached for her hand again. You being a billionaire doesn't change anything for me, Elena. Except maybe I'll let you buy dinner next time. Elena stared at him. Then she laughed, a real laugh that broke the tension. You're not freaked out? I'm processing, but no, not freaked out. Most people would be. I'm not most people. Elena squeezed his hand. No, you're really not. They sat in the car for another few minutes, neither wanting the night to end despite how it had shifted. Finally, Elena walked Daniel to his door. Thank you, she said, for tonight, for listening, for not running. I'm not going anywhere. You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow too, and the day after that. Elena smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Good night, Daniel. Good night. He watched her cross the yard, disappearing into her house. And he stood on his porch long after her lights went out, wondering what kind of man could make someone like Elena afraid. Check. The storm came 3 days before Christmas. The forecast had been calling for it all week. A massive system moving down from Canada, promising ice and snow and potential power outages. Daniel spent the afternoon making sure they had flashlights, batteries, and enough food to last a few days if necessary. Sophie was thrilled. Maybe we'll get snowed in, like in that movie. Maybe. But we're still doing homework just in case. Dad, you're no fun. I'm very fun. I'm responsibly fun. The storm hit around 6 p.m. Wind rattled the windows. Snow came down in thick, heavy sheets. By 7, the power flickered. By 7:30, it was out completely. Daniel lit candles and built a fire in the fireplace, something he'd only used once since moving in. Sophie was delighted, insisting they roast marshmallows and tell ghost stories like they were camping. This isn't really camping, Soph. It counts. We have a fire. We're inside. Indoor camping. Daniel couldn't argue with that logic. Around 8:30, someone knocked on the door. Daniel opened it to find Elena standing on his porch, snow dusting her hair, holding a flashlight. My power's out, she said. Ours too. Do you have a fireplace? Yeah, come in. Elena stepped inside, brushing snow from her coat. Sophie ran over immediately. Elena, we're indoor camping. I can see that. Very cozy. Do you want to camp with us? Elena looked at Daniel. He shrugged. The more the merrier. So Elena stayed. They roasted marshmallows and told stories and played board games by candlelight. Sophie eventually fell asleep on the couch, curled under a blanket, and Daniel carried her to bed. When he came back downstairs, Elena was sitting on the floor in front of the fireplace, staring into the flames. Thanks for letting me crash your camping trip, she said. Daniel sat beside her. Thanks for joining it. They were quiet for a while, the fire crackling between them. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, it felt safe, separate from the world. I haven't told anyone about Victor in years, Elena said suddenly. Not friends, not family, no one. Why did you tell me? Because you asked, because you didn't push, because... She turned to look at him. Because I wanted you to know the truth, even if it meant you'd walk away. I told you I'm not walking away. People say that. Then they meet Victor and realize the kind of chaos he brings, and they leave. Has that happened before? Once. Someone I thought I could trust. Victor showed up, made a scene, and that was it. Over. Daniel moved closer. Elena, I'm a high school history teacher raising a 6-year-old alone. I've dealt with helicopter parents, teenage drama, and custody negotiations. Your ex doesn't scare me. He should. He's relentless when he wants something. And what does he want? Me, the company, control. Elena's voice was tight. He can't have the company anymore. I made sure of that. But he still thinks he can have me. Does he know where you live? I don't think so. I've been careful. But the phone call could mean he's looking or could mean nothing. She rubbed her face. I don't know, and not knowing makes me paranoid. Daniel reached out, gently turning her face toward him. You're not paranoid. You're protecting yourself. There's a difference. Elena's eyes met his, firelight dancing in their depths. What if he finds me? What if he shows up and ruins everything? Then we deal with it. Together. You keep saying that. Together. Because I mean it. Something shifted in Elena's expression. Something that looked like trust, like hope. She leaned forward, closing the distance between them, and kissed him. It wasn't their first kiss. They'd shared a brief, hesitant one the week before, both too nervous to let it go anywhere. But this was different. This was deliberate. Real. Daniel kissed her back, one hand cupping her face, the other resting on her waist. She tasted like marshmallows and wine, and she fit against him like she'd been designed to be there. When they pulled apart, both breathless, Elena rested her forehead against his. I'm still scared, she whispered. Me too. But I want this. I want you. Then you've got me. They sat there, wrapped in each other, the fire warming them both. Outside, the storm howled, but inside they were safe, at least for now. The next morning brought unexpected silence. Daniel woke on the couch, Elena asleep beside him, her head on his shoulder. The fire had burned down to embers. Snow was still falling outside, blanketing everything in white. His phone buzzed, a text from Miranda. Roads are closed. Can't get Sophie today. Is she okay with you? Daniel typed back. She's fine. Stay safe. Sophie appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Is Elena still here? Yeah, she fell asleep. Can we make pancakes? If we're quiet. They crept to the kitchen, trying not to wake Elena. Daniel made pancakes while Sophie set the table, and they were halfway through breakfast when Elena appeared, looking rumpled and soft in the morning light. Good morning, Daniel said. Morning? She smiled at Sophie. Pancakes? Dad's specialty. I thought his specialty was burning things. Sophie giggled. That too. Elena joined them at the table, and they ate together like it was the most natural thing in the world, like they'd done this 100 times before. After breakfast, Daniel stepped outside to assess the storm damage. The snow was deep, at least a foot, maybe more. His car was completely buried. The street was empty, impassable. Elena joined him on the porch. We're stuck. Looks like it. I should probably get back to my house. Or you could stay. It's warm here, and Sophie would love it. Elena hesitated. Daniel, I don't want to overstep. You're not. Stay. Please. She looked at him, something soft in her expression. Okay. They spent the day together, built snowmen with Sophie, watched movies, made hot chocolate, and for a few perfect hours the rest of the world didn't exist. But then Elena's phone rang again. Same number. Same name flashing on the screen. Victor. This time Elena answered. Stop calling me. Daniel couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but He watched Elena's face go pale. You're not welcome here. I made that clear. A pause. I don't care what you want. We're done. We've been done for 5 years. Another pause, longer this time. If you show up, I'll call the police. I'm not afraid of you anymore, Victor. She hung up. Her hands were shaking. Daniel moved to her side immediately. What did he say? He knows where I am. He's coming. When? He didn't say, but soon. Elena looked up at Daniel, fear written across her face. I need to leave before he shows up and drags you into this. Elena, no, you don't understand. When Victor wants something, he doesn't stop. He'll dig into your life, your past, Sophie's custody arrangement. He'll find every vulnerability and exploit it. Then let him try. Daniel, please. No. Daniel took her hands firmly. You're not running. Not from me. Not from this. If he shows up, we face him. Together. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is. Because you're part of my life now. Which means your problems are my problems. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I never should have let this happen. I never should have gotten close to you. Well, you did, and I'm not sorry about it. You will be. When he shows up and makes your life hell. Maybe. Or maybe he'll realize you're not alone anymore and back off. Victor doesn't back off. Daniel pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. Then we'll deal with it, whatever comes. We'll deal with it. Elena buried her face in his chest. I'm so tired of being scared. I know, but you're not alone anymore. They stood like that for a long time, snow falling outside, the future uncertain, but the present solid. And Daniel made a silent promise to himself and to her. Whatever this Victor brought to their door, he'd face it, because Elena was worth fighting for. And he wasn't about to let anyone take that away. Victor Hale arrived on a Tuesday morning, 3 days after the storm had passed, and the roads had cleared. Daniel was loading Sophie into the car for school when a black Tesla pulled up to the curb in front of Elena's house. The car was sleek and expensive, the kind that announced its owner's wealth before he even stepped out. The man who emerged was tall, easily 6'2", with silver-streaked dark hair styled perfectly despite the early hour. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly salary, and he moved with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Daniel's stomach dropped. He knew immediately who this was. Sophie tugged on his hand. Dad, we're going to be late. Just a second, Soph. Victor was walking up Elena's front path, briefcase in hand, moving like he owned the place. Daniel watched him ring the doorbell once, twice, then peer through the window. Elena didn't answer. Victor stepped back, pulling out his phone. A moment later, Daniel heard Elena's phone ringing inside her house, loud enough to carry across the yard in the quiet morning air. She still didn't answer. Victor's jaw tightened. He looked around, assessing the neighborhood with the calculating gaze of someone used to evaluating assets. His eyes landed on Daniel. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then Victor smiled, cold and sharp. He walked down Elena's path and crossed the yard toward Daniel's driveway. Excuse me, Victor called out, his voice smooth and practiced. I'm looking for Elena Whitmore. Have you seen her? Daniel straightened, keeping Sophie slightly behind him. Who's asking? Victor Hale. I'm an old friend of Elena's. Friend? Victor's smile didn't waver. Business associate, actually. We have some unfinished matters to discuss. She's not home. Her car's in the driveway. Then maybe she doesn't want to see you. Victor's expression shifted, just slightly, a crack in the polished exterior. And you are? Her neighbor. Just her neighbor? Daniel met his gaze steadily. Is there something you need, Mr. Hale? Because my daughter and I are running late. Victor glanced down at Sophie, who was staring up at him with open curiosity. His expression softened in a way that felt calculated. Of course. I apologize for keeping you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. If you see Elena, would you give her this? Tell her it's important. Daniel took the card without looking at it. Sure. Appreciate it. Victor's eyes lingered on Daniel for a moment longer, assessing. Then he turned and walked back to his car. Daniel waited until the Tesla pulled away before he moved. His heart was pounding, adrenaline coursing through him even though nothing had actually happened. "Who was that?" Sophie asked. "Someone Elena used to know." "He was fancy." "Yeah, he was." Daniel got Sophie buckled in and drove her to school on autopilot, his mind racing. He needed to tell Elena that Victor had been there, needed to make sure she was okay. The moment he dropped Sophie off, he texted Elena. "Victor was just at your house. Are you okay?" No response. Daniel tried calling. It went straight to voicemail. By the time he got home, his anxiety had transformed into something sharper. He knocked on Elena's door, then knocked again when she didn't answer. "Elena, it's me. I know you're in there." Silence. "Please, I just need to know you're okay." Finally, the door opened. Elena stood there in sweatpants and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back, eyes red-rimmed like she'd been crying. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. "He was here," she said flatly. "I know, I saw him." "Did he talk to you?" "Briefly. He gave me his card, asked me to tell you to call him." Elena's laugh was bitter. "Of course he did." "Elena, what's going on?" She stepped back, letting him inside. The house was dark, curtains drawn, the morning light blocked out. It felt like she'd been hiding. "He's not going to leave," Elena said, her voice hollow. "I thought maybe if I ignored him long enough, he'd get the message. But Victor doesn't take hints. He doesn't take no. He just keeps coming." Daniel closed the door behind him. "What does he want?" "Me. The company. Our old life." Elena sank onto her couch, pulling her knees to her chest. "He's been trying to rebuild what we had. The business, the empire. But he can't do it without me. I was the one with the vision. He was just the one who knew how to monetize it. So he wants you to come back. He thinks I will. He thinks if he just pushes hard enough, reminds me of what we had, I'll cave." She looked up at Daniel. "He doesn't understand that I'd rather have nothing than go back to that life." Daniel sat beside her. "Did he threaten you?" "Not directly. He never does. Victor's too smart for that. He just applies pressure, finds leverage, makes life difficult until you give him what he wants." "What kind of leverage?" Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You, Sophie, this life you've built." Daniel's blood ran cold. "What?" "I saw the way he looked at you this morning. I was watching from the window. He's already calculating, already figuring out how to use you against me." "Elena, I can handle—" "No, you can't." Her voice was sharp. "You don't know what he's capable of. I've seen him destroy people who got in his way. Good people. People who just wanted to live their lives." "So what are you saying?" Elena stood, pacing. "I'm saying I need to deal with this alone. I need to talk to him, make it clear once and for all that we're done, and I need to do it without dragging you into the middle of it." "You're not doing this alone." "Daniel, no." He stood, moving to block her path. "You keep trying to push me away every time things get hard. But I'm not leaving. I'm not walking away just because your ex showed up." "You should, for Sophie's sake, if not your own." "Sophie is exactly why I'm staying. Because I want her to see that when someone you care about is in trouble, you don't run. You stand with them." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "He could make things very difficult for you. Your job, your custody arrangement. He has resources, Daniel, more than you can imagine. Let him try." "You don't mean that?" "Yes, I do." Daniel took her hands. "Elena, I know you're scared. I know this feels impossible. But running didn't work. Hiding didn't work. Maybe it's time to face him head on. And say what? The truth. That you're done. That you've moved on. That he has no power over you anymore." Elena pulled her hands away. "He'll never believe that." "Then make him believe it." She looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. Fear, yes, but also something else. Something that looked like determination. "I need to think," she said finally. "Okay? Alone. Please." Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to stay and make sure she didn't spiral, but he also knew when to give someone space. "I'm right next door if you need me." Elena nodded, not meeting his eyes. Daniel left, but he didn't go far. He spent the rest of the day watching Elena's house from his window, waiting for Victor to return. The Tesla never came back, but Daniel's anxiety didn't ease. That evening, after he picked up Sophie from school and made dinner and helped with homework, his phone buzzed, a text from Elena. "I'm going to meet with him tomorrow, alone. Please don't try to stop me." Daniel stared at the message, his chest tight. He typed back, "Where?" "Downtown. Neutral territory. Public place." "What time?" 2 p.m. Daniel hesitated, then wrote, "I won't stop you, but I'll be nearby if you need me." "Daniel, you don't have to." "I know, but I'm going to anyway." A long pause. Then, "Thank you, but..." Daniel called in sick to work the next day, the first time he'd done that in 3 years. He arranged for Sophie to go home with a friend after school, giving himself the afternoon free. At 1:30, he drove downtown and parked near the coffee shop Elena had mentioned in a follow-up text. He could see her through the window, already seated at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. She looked small, nervous, but also resolved. Daniel stayed in his car, watching, waiting. Victor arrived at exactly 2 p.m. He walked into the coffee shop like he owned it, drawing attention without trying. Several people looked up as he passed. He spotted Elena immediately and made his way to her table. Daniel couldn't hear what they were saying, but he watched their body language. Victor sat across from Elena, leaning forward, gesturing as he spoke. Elena sat rigid, her expression carefully neutral. The conversation went on for 10 minutes. 15, 20. Then Victor reached across the table and took Elena's hand. She pulled away immediately. Victor's expression darkened. He leaned closer, his voice rising enough that Daniel could see people at nearby tables glancing over. Elena stood. Victor grabbed her wrist. Daniel was out of his car before he could think. He crossed the street and entered the coffee shop, adrenaline sharpening everything. Elena was trying to pull her arm free. Victor was still holding on, his grip tight enough to hurt. "Let go of her," Daniel said, his voice cutting through the ambient noise. Victor looked up, surprised. Then his expression shifted to something colder. "This is a private conversation." "Doesn't look private. Looks like she's trying to leave and you won't let her." "I said this is private." Daniel moved closer. "And I said let her go." For a moment, nobody moved. The coffee shop had gone quiet, all eyes on them. Then Victor released Elena's wrist and stood, squaring his shoulders. He was taller than Daniel by several inches, broader, more intimidating, but Daniel didn't back down. "Who the hell are you?" Victor demanded. "Someone who cares about her, which is more than I can say for you." Victor's jaw tightened. He looked at Elena. "You brought backup?" "I didn't bring anyone," Elena said, her voice shaking. "He's here because he cares." "How touching." Victor's tone was mocking. Elena's found herself a white knight. "Tell me, does he know who you really are? What you left behind?" "He knows everything." "Does he know you signed away $3 billion because you were too weak to handle the pressure?" "I wasn't weak. I was done being controlled by you." Victor laughed, sharp and cruel. "Controlled? I gave you everything. I built you into someone who mattered, and you threw it away to play house in the suburbs." "I threw away a prison," Elena shot back, "and I'd do it again." "You think this is better?" Victor gestured at the coffee shop, at Daniel. "This mediocre life with mediocre people?" Daniel stepped forward. "That's enough." Victor turned on him. "Stay out of this. You have no idea what you're interfering with." "I know enough. I know you're harassing someone who's made it clear she doesn't want anything to do with you." "Harassing?" Victor's smile was cold. "I'm trying to have a conversation with my former partner about business matters that concern both of us." "She's not your partner anymore. That's not your decision to make." "No, it's hers, and she's made it." Victor's eyes narrowed. "You really think you can protect her from me? You're a school teacher, what? Making 40 grand a year? Living in a rental house? I could destroy your life before breakfast." "Maybe, but threatening me just proves her point, that you're not here because you care about her. You're here because you need to control her. Something dangerous flashed in Victor's eyes. Careful. Or what? You'll sue me? You'll dig into my background? Go ahead. I've got nothing to hide and nothing to lose. Daniel moved to stand beside Elena. But she's not coming back with you. She's not signing anything. She's not giving you what you want. So you can leave now, or I can call the police and let them explain trespassing laws. Victor stared at him, anger simmering beneath the polished exterior. Then he looked at Elena. This is what you want? A life so small you have to hide in it? Elena's voice, when she spoke, was steady. I want a life where I choose, and I choose him. I choose this. I choose anything that isn't you. The words landed like a punch. Victor's expression went cold. You'll regret this. I regret wasting 10 years with you, but I won't regret this. For a moment, Daniel thought Victor might actually do something, throw a punch, make a scene, escalate. But then Victor smoothed his suit jacket, his mask sliding back into place. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. I've made plenty. You were the biggest one. Victor's jaw clenched. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the coffee shop. Daniel and Elena stood there, breathing hard, the entire coffee shop staring at them. Come on, Daniel said softly, taking Elena's hand. Let's get out of here. They left together, Elena's hand trembling in his. They didn't talk on the drive back. Elena stared out the window, her arms wrapped around herself, silent tears streaming down her face. Daniel drove carefully, giving her space to process. When they pulled up to their street, Elena finally spoke. You shouldn't have done that. Probably not. He meant what he said about destroying your life. Let him try. Elena turned to look at him. Daniel, you don't understand. Victor doesn't make idle threats. If he decides you're an obstacle, then I'm an obstacle, and we'll deal with it. I can't let you sacrifice. Stop. Daniel cut the engine and turned to face her fully. Elena, I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm choosing. The same way you chose. And I'm choosing you. Why? Because you're worth it. Because Sophie adores you. Because for the first time in years, I feel like I'm building something real. He reached for her hand. Because I'm falling in love with you, and I'm tired of pretending I'm not. Elena's breath caught. Daniel, you don't have to say it back. I just need you to know. Whatever Victor throws at us, we face it together. No more running. No more hiding. Elena squeezed his hand, tears flowing freely now. I'm scared. I know. Me too. What if he... We'll handle it. She laughed through her tears. You keep saying that. Because I keep meaning it. Elena leaned across the console and kissed him, desperate and grateful and terrified all at once. Daniel kissed her back, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. When they pulled apart, Elena rested her forehead against his. I love you too, she whispered. I didn't want to, but I do. Yeah? Yeah. They sat there for a long moment, holding each other, the future uncertain, but the present solid. Then Daniel's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his stomach dropped. Miranda. He answered. Hey, what's up? Daniel, we need to talk. Miranda's voice was tight. Someone contacted me today. About Sophie. About custody. Daniel's blood ran cold. Who? A lawyer. Said he was representing a concerned party who had questions about Sophie's living situation. About your fitness as a parent. What? He asked about your work schedule, your finances, whether Sophie was being properly cared for. Daniel, what the hell is going on? Daniel looked at Elena, who'd gone pale. Victor. It had already started. I'll call you back, Daniel said. Daniel, I'll call you back. He hung up and stared at the phone in his hand. Elena's voice was small. What did he do? He went after Sophie. Oh no, Daniel, I'm so sorry. Don't. Daniel's voice was hard. Don't apologize. This is on him, not you. But if you hadn't what? Existed? Moved here? Met me? Daniel turned to her. Elena, this is what abusers do. They isolate. They threaten. They find the things you love and they weaponize them. His jaw set. But I'm not letting him win. What are you going to do? I'm going to call a lawyer. I'm going to document everything. And then I'm going to make it very clear to Victor that if he comes after my daughter, I will bury him. Elena stared at him. You can't fight someone like Victor. He has too many resources. Maybe. But I have something he doesn't. What? The truth. And people who care. Daniel took her hand. We're not alone in this, Elena. We have each other. We have Sophie. We have a life worth protecting. But what if it's not enough? Then we make it enough. Elena's eyes searched his face. Then, slowly, she nodded. Okay, she said. Together. Together. They got out of the car and walked into Daniel's house, hands linked, ready to face whatever came next. Because running was no longer an option, and neither was giving up. Not on each other, not on the life they were building, not on anything. Victor Hale had just made the mistake of threatening the wrong single father, and Daniel Mercer wasn't about to let him forget it. The lawyer Daniel hired was a woman named Rebecca Chen, recommended by another teacher whose brother had gone through a nasty custody battle. She worked out of a small office above a bakery, and her rates were reasonable enough that Daniel could afford her without emptying his savings completely. She listened to everything without interrupting. The phone call from Miranda, Victor's appearance, the veiled threats. When Daniel finished, Rebecca leaned back in her chair and folded her hands. This Victor Hale, she said. He's serious about this? He doesn't bluff. Then we need to be smarter than him. Rebecca pulled out a legal pad. First, document everything. Every interaction, every phone call, every time he shows up. Dates, times, witnesses if possible. Second, I'm going to send a cease and desist letter. Third, we prepare for the possibility that he escalates. What does escalation look like? He could file a formal complaint with child services, claim neglect or unsafe living conditions, force an investigation. Daniel's stomach turned. Can he do that? Just make things up? Anyone can file a complaint. Whether it goes anywhere depends on the evidence, or lack thereof. Rebecca met his eyes. Daniel, I need you to be honest with me. Is there anything in your life that could be used against you? Anything he could twist? Daniel thought hard. I've been late to pick up Sophie a few times. Work ran long, but never more than 15 minutes. That's nothing. What else? I let her eat chicken nuggets too often. I'm terrible at braiding hair. Sometimes I let her stay up past bedtime on weekends. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. I'm not perfect, but I love my daughter. She's happy. She's healthy. She's doing well in school. That's what matters, and that's what we'll demonstrate. Rebecca made notes. I'll also need character references. People who can speak to your parenting. Teachers, neighbors, friends. Elena, Daniel said immediately. She can... Rebecca held up a hand. The woman Victor is targeting? No. That'll hurt more than it helps. He'll paint her as biased. We need neutral parties. Daniel's heart sank, but he understood. Okay, Sophie's teacher, my principal. Maybe some of the other parents from school. Good. Get me names and contact information. Rebecca set down her pen. Daniel, I want to be clear about something. This man has resources. Money buys a lot of things, including very good lawyers. But it doesn't buy truth. And if your record is clean, if Sophie is thriving, then the truth is on our side. And if the truth isn't enough, then we make it enough. The words echoed what Daniel had said to Elena just days before. He left Rebecca's office feeling slightly less terrified, but no less determined. When he got home, Elena was sitting on his porch steps, waiting. She looked like she hadn't slept. How did it go? She asked. She's good. Solid. She thinks we have a chance. That's good. Daniel sat beside her. She said you can't be a reference. Victor will use it against us. Elena nodded slowly. I figured. She was quiet for a moment. Daniel, I've been thinking. About? About how to end this. Permanently. What do you mean? Elena turned to face him. Victor wants control. He wants me back in his world. But more than that, he wants to win. He can't stand losing. So? So I stop playing his game. I go public. Daniel frowned. Public how? I give an interview, tell my story, not just about leaving the company, but about why I left, about his behavior, about the control, about everything. Elena's voice was steady. He's built his entire reputation on being powerful and untouchable. But if I expose him, show people who he really is, he loses that power. Elena, that's risky. He could sue you. Let him. Truth is a defense against defamation. She met his eyes. I've spent 5 years hiding from him, running, changing my life to avoid confrontation. But I'm done running, and I'm done letting him dictate what I can and can't do. Are you sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Daniel reached for her hand. Then I'm with you. You don't have to be. Yes, I do. Elena squeezed his fingers. I'll need to reach out to some journalists I used to know, people who'll tell the story fairly. It might take a week or two to set up. Do what you need to do. She stood, pulling him up with her. In the meantime, you focus on protecting Sophie. That's what matters most. What about protecting you? I can protect myself. I always have. Daniel pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. You don't have to anymore. That's what I keep trying to tell you. Elena rested her head against his chest. I'm still getting used to that. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. They stood like that for a long while, holding each other against the uncertainty of everything ahead. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation and anxiety. Daniel gathered character references, documented his parenting routines, and met with Rebecca twice more to go over strategy. Sophie remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around her, excited about the upcoming school winter concert where she'd be singing in the choir. Miranda called 3 more times, increasingly worried about the lawyer who kept contacting her office, asking questions about Daniel's fitness as a parent. Daniel reassured her each time, explaining what was happening without going into too much detail about Elena's past. This is insane, Miranda said during one call. You're one of the best fathers I know. Sophie adores you. Tell that to Victor's lawyer. I will if I have to. I may not be your wife anymore, Daniel, but I'm not going to let some rich asshole attack you for no reason. The unexpected support meant more than Daniel could express. Elena worked quietly on her end, reaching out to contacts, preparing her story, building a case in public opinion that would undermine Victor's credibility. She showed Daniel drafts of what she planned to say, raw, honest accounts of emotional manipulation, professional sabotage, and the systematic control Victor had exerted over every aspect of her life. This is brave, Daniel said after reading one particularly difficult section about how Victor had isolated her from friends and family. It's terrifying, Elena corrected, but necessary. When are you going public? Next week. There's a journalist from TechCrunch who wants the story. She's been investigating Victor for a while, apparently. Rumors of toxic workplace culture. But no one would go on record. Until now. Until now. The interview was scheduled for Monday morning. The article would go live that evening, but Sunday night, everything changed. Daniel was reading Sophie a bedtime story when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Mercer? A woman's voice, professional and measured. Yes? This is Jessica Monroe from Child Protective Services. I need to schedule a home visit regarding a complaint we received about the welfare of Sophie Mercer. Daniel's heart stopped. What kind of complaint? I can't discuss details over the phone, but I need to conduct a welfare check within 72 hours. Are you available tomorrow afternoon? Yes. What time? 2 o'clock. Please make sure you and your daughter are both home. The call ended before Daniel could ask any more questions. He sat there, phone in his hand, trying to control the panic rising in his chest. Sophie was looking up at him, confused. What's wrong, Dad? Nothing, sweetheart. Just work stuff. You look scared. Daniel forced a smile. I'm fine. Let's finish the story, okay? But his mind was racing. Victor had actually done it, filed a formal complaint, forced an investigation. The moment Sophie was asleep, Daniel called Elena. He reported me to CPS, Daniel said without preamble. Elena's sharp intake of breath was answer enough. When are they coming? Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Okay, we can handle this. Your house is clean, right? Sophie has food, clothes, everything she needs? Of course she does. Then you'll be fine. They'll see she's well cared for and dismiss the complaint. What if they don't? Daniel, breathe. You're a good father. Anyone who spends 5 minutes with you and Sophie can see that. Victor has lawyers. He can make anything sound bad. Then we make the truth sound better. Elena paused. Do you want me there tomorrow? Won't that make it worse? I don't care anymore. If you want me there, I'll be there. Daniel closed his eyes, grateful beyond words. Yeah, I want you there. Then I'll be there. Jessica Monroe arrived at exactly 2 p.m. the next day, accompanied by another social worker named David Park. They were both professional, polite, and impossible to read. Elena had come over an hour earlier, helping Daniel make sure every corner of the house was presentable. Not that it needed much. Daniel kept a clean home, but the anxiety made them both need something to do. Sophie was at the kitchen table doing homework when the doorbell rang. Daniel answered, letting the social workers inside. Mr. Mercer, thank you for making time for us, Jessica said. This is my colleague, David. We're here to conduct a routine welfare check. Of course, whatever you need. Jessica smiled at Sophie. Hi there. You must be Sophie. Sophie looked up from her math worksheet. Hi. Are you here to check if my dad is doing a good job? Jessica's eyebrows rose slightly. Something like that. He's doing great. He makes me breakfast every day and helps with my homework and reads me stories before bed. Sometimes he burns dinner, but that's okay because we just order pizza. Elena covered a smile. Daniel felt his heart squeeze. David was already looking around the house, making notes on a tablet. Jessica sat down at the table with Sophie. Can you show me your room? Jessica asked. Sure, it's upstairs. Dad helped me organize it. Well, Elena helped too. Jessica glanced at Elena, who'd been standing quietly by the kitchen counter. And you are? Elena Whitmore. I'm Daniel's neighbor and friend. How long have you known the family? A few months since they moved in. Jessica made a note. And you're here today because Daniel asked me to be here. For support. Jessica nodded slowly, then followed Sophie upstairs. Daniel stood in the kitchen, feeling like he was being judged for crimes he hadn't committed. David continued his inspection, opening the refrigerator, checking the pantry, examining the first aid kit in the bathroom. Elena moved to Daniel's side, her presence steadying. It's going to be okay, she whispered. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Look around. Look at what you've built. Anyone can see Sophie is loved here. Upstairs, Daniel could hear Sophie chattering away, showing Jessica her toys, her books, her art projects taped to the walls. His daughter's voice was bright and confident, unworried. When Jessica and Sophie came back downstairs, the social worker was smiling. You have a lovely room, Sophie, very organized. Dad says if I keep it clean, I can get a fish. That sounds like a fair deal. Jessica turned to Daniel. Mr. Mercer, can we speak privately? Daniel's stomach dropped, but he nodded. They stepped into the living room while David stayed with Sophie and Elena in the kitchen. I want to be upfront with you, Jessica said. The complaint we received was detailed. It alleged neglect, unsafe living conditions, and questionable judgment regarding Sophie's care. None of that is true. I can see that. Your home is clean, well-maintained, and child-appropriate. Sophie is clearly healthy, happy, and well-adjusted. Her school records show she's thriving academically and socially. Jessica paused. Mr. Mercer, in my 10 years doing this job, I've seen real neglect, real abuse. This isn't that. Relief flooded through Daniel. So you'll dismiss the complaint? I'll file a report stating that I found no evidence of neglect or unsafe conditions. However, Jessica's expression turned serious. Whoever filed this complaint provided very specific information they couldn't have unless they'd been watching your family closely. Daniel's blood ran cold. What kind of information? Your work schedule, Sophie's school routine, details about your custody arrangement. Jessica met his eyes. Mr. Mercer, do you have any idea who might want to cause problems for you? Yes, a man named Victor Hale. And why would he do that? Daniel glanced toward the kitchen, where Elena was helping Sophie with her homework. Because he wants to hurt someone I care about, and he's using my daughter to do it. Jessica followed his gaze, understanding dawning. I see. Mr. Mercer, I can't give you legal advice, but I strongly suggest you document everything. If this man continues to harass you or your family, that's something law enforcement needs to know. I've already hired a lawyer. Good. Keep her informed. Jessica pulled out a business card. If anything else happens, any other complaints, any contact from Mr. Hale, call me directly. False reports waste our time and resources, but more importantly, they hurt families. I don't take kindly to people weaponizing the system. Daniel took the card, hope rising in his chest. Thank you. No need to thank me, I'm just doing my job. Jessica raised her voice. David, we're done here. David emerged from the kitchen. All clear on my end. They said their goodbyes. Sophie waved cheerfully, and then they were gone. The moment the door closed, Daniel sagged against it. We're okay, he said, more to himself than anyone. We're okay. Elena crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him. I told you. You did. Sophie appeared in the doorway. Are they gone? Yeah, kiddo, they're gone. Did we pass? Daniel laughed despite everything. With flying colors. Good. Can we get pizza now? I'm starving. The article about Elena and Victor went live the next evening at 6 p.m. Daniel read it on his phone while Sophie watched cartoons, his heart pounding as he scrolled through Elena's words. She'd held nothing back. The control, the manipulation, the way Victor had systematically isolated her from anyone who might challenge his authority. She talked about leaving the company, walking away from billions, choosing peace over power. And she talked about finding love again, about meeting someone who saw her as a person, not an asset, about building a life that was small and quiet and real. She didn't name Daniel, but anyone who read between the lines would understand. The article ended with a simple statement from Elena. I spent 10 years letting someone else define my worth. I spent 5 years hiding from him. But I'm done with both. Victor Hale doesn't own my story, and he doesn't own me. Within hours, the article had exploded across social media. Former employees of Victor's company started coming forward with their own stories. Journalists began digging into his business practices. The narrative Victor had built, of being a brilliant, visionary leader, started to crumble. Elena's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, former colleagues, people she hadn't spoken to in years. She ignored most of them. But she answered when Daniel called. Are you okay? He asked. I don't know. Ask me tomorrow. It's a powerful article, Elena. Really powerful. It needed to be said. How are you feeling? She was quiet for a moment. Free? Terrified. But free. Victor's going to respond. Let him. The truth is out there now. He can't put that back in the box. She was right. By the next morning, Victor's company had released a statement denying all allegations and threatening legal action against Elena and the publication. But the damage was done. The story had momentum, and for the first time since this started, Victor was playing defense. 3 days later, Daniel got a call from Rebecca. The lawyer who was harassing Miranda has withdrawn. The complaint to CPS has been officially dismissed, and I received a very interesting phone call this morning. From who? Victor Hale's attorney. They want to negotiate a mutual non-disparagement agreement. Daniel's heart leapt. What does that mean? It means Victor wants this to go away. He'll agree to leave you and Elena alone if she agrees to stop talking to the press. What did you say? I said I'd discuss it with my client, but Daniel, this is good news. It means he's backing down. Can we trust him? We'll make it legally binding, with penalties if he violates it. But yes, I think we can. Daniel hung up and immediately went next door. Elena answered wearing paint-stained jeans, her hair pulled back, music playing in the background. She'd been painting her kitchen, something she'd mentioned wanting to do for months. He wants to negotiate, Daniel said. Elena set down her paintbrush. Tell me. Daniel explained the offer. Elena listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. What do you think? He asked when he finished. I think he knows he's losing, and Victor hates losing more than anything. Is that a yes? Elena smiled slowly. That's a yes, but I have conditions. What conditions? He leaves you alone. He leaves Sophie alone. And he publicly states that all allegations against you were unfounded. Elena's voice was steel. If he wants me to stop talking, he pays for it by clearing your name completely. He'll never agree to that. Then I keep talking. She was magnificent, standing in her half-painted kitchen, covered in paint, absolutely unbending. Daniel fell a little more in love with her right then. Rebecca negotiated for 2 more days. In the end, Victor agreed to everything. The non-disparagement agreement was signed. Victor's lawyer sent a formal letter to Miranda stating that all concerns about Daniel's parenting had been unfounded. The complaint to CPS was not only dismissed but expunged from the record. And just like that, it was over. Victor sent one final text to Elena. Daniel was with her when it came through. You win. I hope he's worth it. Elena deleted it without responding. He is, she said quietly. Worth all of it. Spring came slowly that year, winter reluctant to release its grip. But eventually the snow melted, flowers began to bloom, and the world turned green again. Daniel's life settled back into routine. Teaching, Sophie, Elena. The 3 of them had become a unit without anyone officially declaring it. Elena came to Sophie's school concerts. Daniel helped Elena finish painting her kitchen. They had dinner together more nights than not. One Saturday morning in late April, Daniel woke up to find Sophie standing beside his bed. Dad, can I ask you something? He rubbed his eyes. What time is it? 7:30. Can I ask you something? Sure, Soph. Are you going to marry Elena? Daniel was suddenly very awake. What? Are you going to marry Elena? Because I think you should. Where is this coming from? Sophie climbed onto the bed. Mason's dad married his girlfriend last month, and now Mason has a stepmom. And I was thinking that if you married Elena, she could be my stepmom, which would be cool because I like her. Daniel sat up, processing. Do you want Elena to be your stepmom? Duh. She's nice and she helps me with art and she doesn't treat me like a baby. Sophie paused. Plus, she makes you happy. You smile more now. Daniel's throat tightened. You're pretty smart, you know that? I know, so are you going to? I don't know, Soph. That's a big decision. But you love her, right? Yeah, I do. And she loves you? I think so. Then what's the problem? Out of the mouths of babes, Daniel thought. No problem, I just need to think about it. Don't think too long, you're not getting any younger. Daniel laughed. I'm 38. That's pretty old. Get out of my room. Sophie giggled and ran off, leaving Daniel alone with his thoughts. Marriage. He hadn't really let himself think about it seriously. Things with Elena were good, easy. But permanent? That felt big, especially given how recently his divorce had been finalized. But Sophie was right. He loved Elena, and Elena loved him, and they'd already weathered a storm together that would have broken most relationships. So why not? That evening, after Sophie was in bed, Daniel walked next door. Elena answered in pajamas, a book in her hand. Hey, she said, surprised. Everything okay? Can I come in? Of course. They settled on her couch. Elena marked her page and set the book aside. What's on your mind? She asked. Daniel took a breath. Sophie asked me this morning if I was going to marry you. Elena's eyes widened. Oh, yeah. What did you tell her? That I needed to think about it. And have you? Thought about it? Daniel turned to face her fully. Elena, 6 months ago, I was barely holding my life together. Single dad, messy divorce, no idea what I was doing, and then you showed up, and everything changed. Daniel, let me finish. You changed everything. You made me feel like I wasn't carrying the world alone anymore. You made Sophie feel safe and loved. You made our house feel like home. He took her hand. I know we haven't been together that long. I know this is fast, but I also know I don't want to do life without you. Elena's eyes were shining. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to marry you. Not right now, not tomorrow, but someday. When we're both ready. Daniel squeezed her hand. I'm saying I'm all in, Elena. Completely. If you are. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Ask me. What? Ask me properly. Right now. I don't have a ring. I don't care about a ring. Ask me. Daniel's heart was pounding. He slid off the couch, kneeling in front of her. It wasn't planned, wasn't perfect, but it was real. Elena Whitmore, will you marry me? Elena was crying now, smiling through tears. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. Daniel pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply. She kissed him back, laughing and crying at the same time. We're really doing this? She asked when they finally pulled apart. We're really doing this. Sophie's going to lose her mind. She's the one who suggested it. Elena laughed. Smart kid. The smartest. They stayed up half the night talking about the future. Small wedding or big? His house or hers or somewhere new? How to blend their lives officially when they'd already been blending them unofficially for months. It didn't matter. The details would work themselves out. What mattered was the choice, the commitment, the decision to build something together. Cool. They told Sophie the next morning over pancakes. Elena and I have something to tell you, Daniel said. Sophie looked up from her syrup-drenched plate. You're getting married. Daniel and Elena exchanged glances. How did you... You're both smiling weird, and Dad only smiles weird when something really good happens. Sophie grinned. So when's the wedding? We haven't planned that yet. Can I be a flower girl? Absolutely, Elena said. Can we get a dog? That's not related to the wedding, Soph. But can we? Daniel looked at Elena, who shrugged. Why not? Really? Sophie's eyes went huge. Really? But you have to help take care of it. Sophie launched herself at them both, wrapping her small arms around their necks. Best day ever. And sitting there in the kitchen, the three of them tangled together, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. Complete. The wedding happened in June, in Elena's backyard under a canopy of white flowers. It was small, maybe 30 people. Sophie's teacher, Daniel's co-workers, a few of Elena's old friends who'd stood by her through everything. Miranda even came, bringing her boyfriend, both of them genuinely happy for Daniel's new beginning. Sophie took her role as flower girl very seriously, practicing her walk for days beforehand. She wore a white dress with a yellow sash and scattered rose petals with careful precision. Elena wore a simple ivory dress, nothing extravagant, just elegant and perfectly her. Daniel wore a suit he'd owned for years, feeling slightly underdressed until Elena told him he looked perfect. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Elena promised to love him honestly, to never hide who she was, to be a partner in all things. Daniel promised to stand beside her, to choose her every day, to build a life that was theirs. When they kissed, Sophie cheered louder than anyone. The reception was casual, barbecue and music and dancing in the backyard as the sun set. At one point, Daniel found himself standing at the edge of the yard with Elena, watching their guests mingle and laugh. Happy? Elena asked. Incredibly. No regrets? Not a single one. She leaned into him. I love you, Daniel Mercer. I love you too, Elena Mercer. She smiled at the name. They decided she'd take his, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Wanted to leave the Whitmore name and everything it represented behind completely. Think Victor saw the announcement? Daniel asked. Probably, don't care. Me neither. And they didn't. Victor was part of the past, a chapter that had closed. This was the future, this moment, this life. Sophie ran over, grabbing their hands. Come dance! Everyone's dancing! They let her pull them back to the party, back to the music and laughter and joy. And as Daniel spun his daughter around while his wife watched and smiled, he thought about how much had changed in less than a year. He'd moved to this quiet street looking for stability, for peace. He'd found so much more. He'd found love, partnership, family. He'd found home. Not in a house or a place, but in the people who chose to stand beside him. In the woman who saw him completely and loved him anyway. In the daughter who reminded him every day why showing up mattered. The music played on, the sun set slowly, and Daniel danced with his family, grateful for every moment that had led him here. To this backyard, this life, this love. It wasn't perfect, it would never be perfect, but it was theirs. And that was more than enough.